Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlog Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and this is Abram Buhner, who I know for certain we have all had a deep-seated fear of missing out on. And today we're here to talk about the fear of missing out, video games, playing games at launch, playing games after launch, and how we each personally feel about it, as well as some of our community members who we asked about this topic, because this is something that has been brought up a lot in recent times as there's so many games coming out. And the debate that I think each person has within themselves is, do I want to play this game when it comes out, and all the pros and cons that comes with that, or do I want to wait either for a sale or even further down the line, like, 2, 3 years, 10 years out? There you have this time scale you can work with, and everyone's kind of wrestling with it right now, so it's kind of been brought up. And we're here to give our, I think, very different thoughts on our experience and our values, our difference in values in what we prefer out of when we play our games and why we choose to play them.
Yeah, and we're recording this just shortly after the release of Silent Hill and Sonic, both of which we bought. I'm also on top of that in that soup. I'm also playing Consume Me. Oh, cool, and obviously we're Hades 2 is another one that's just released. Yep. We're only a couple days away for, I don't know if either of us are actually going to play this, but Final Fantasy Tactics Remake is out in a couple days. Mm-hmm. Mario Galaxy 1 and Plus 2 are coming back out in a couple days. Ghost of Yotei is also next week, right? So we're sort of having this conversation really in the thick of it. And so...
Yep. And that's all following up something that is what sparked this conversation in our minds, which is the release of Hollow Knight Silksong and what that meant for the timing and releases of many games around it. Around the same day that Silksong was coming out was Hot Shots Golf and Chronos and Hell Is Us, and then a couple of days later you've got Borderlands, and games are moving. The indies are like fleeing certain spots, but that means other certain spots are more crowded. Yeah. It's a really complicated landscape right now, especially for game players who want to play games when they come out. It can be a tough decision to make because no one has time for everything.
I want to find an article here that I was thinking about when I was walking up the stairs to do this video with you. It's an article that Rebecca Valentine did for IGN about Silksong. I think it's this one here. We can put it in the description or something. I'm not gonna bother reading out the whole thing here, but it's an interview that Rebecca Valentine did here. And I'm trying to find the name of the person she did it with. I'll put it in the description. The high-level takeaway of the article is that she is talking with somebody who does a lot of PR, marketing, and strategy for games of various scales. Yeah. And the point of the piece that this person is making is that there are great cases for and against releasing your game in a busy environment.
Sure.
The reason I raise this is because I want to put it out there first that the perspective I'm speaking about in this video is solely the perspective of the player. There's a different conversation to be had about the what this sort of kind of traffic jam release schedule means for a developer. But for me right now, I'm speaking solely from the perspective of the player. I'm not going to deign that you do the same, but I want to put that out there first.
No, I think I'll do the same. I think because this conversation, and especially the way we framed it for our community members, was more about the experience and the pros and the cons of playing a game at launch or waiting, and how specifically the idea of the fear of missing out at launch impacts our playing decisions. It's a different conversation to be had of release timing, calendar pacing, spacing between releases. That is something I'm very interested in talking about, but I don't think that's the conversation we're having.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to clarify that is because here's my opening remark. This is a great problem to have. Sure. That's my high-level thought about this whole thing. This is a great problem to have.
No, I totally agree. I think it comes down to then how that impacts us, if it is a great problem to have and we're happy that it's a problem we have, or if it's something that is a great problem to have and then it is overwhelming, can cause a little bit of internal stress or deciding whether you're going to play this or the other, or if you feel like you have to rush things because you want to play something when it comes out. That is where I agree. Umbrella, it is a good problem to have. More good games in various genres is a good thing because that gives us player choice. And right now, in this 2 month window
Yeah.
is like the most player choice I've ever felt playing video
Because
games.
I think back to in 2016, like the infamous very small holiday window where Call of Duty, I think it was Infinite Warfare that year, Battlefield 1 and
Yeah.
Titanfall 2 all came out, and I
Yes.
want to say that within like a month of each other. They might have even been
Yeah.
back to
Sounds
back to
right.
back weeks.
Hmm.
And I remember, for me, I was in high school at the time. I didn't have much money, so I could pick one of those, and I picked
Hmm.
Battlefield. And that's a hard position to be in, not only financially, not being able to afford all the games you want or having to make the sort of financial choices, but also just having to say, okay, well, I love shooters, and here's
Hmm.
3 awesome ones, but they're all right here. I
Yeah.
can't be online in all of them. I can't be trying to pay attention to
Oh yeah.
the
Hmm.
nuances of all these shooters. These are all 3 of the same type of game. But I think
Yeah.
about right now, and I think about all of the different games we're talking about, sort of running up onto and into each other, right?
Yeah.
Everything we listed. You talk about Silk Song, you talk about Hades, you talk about Silent Hill, Sonic Racing, Ghost of Yotei. You keep listing them down and down.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
actually not really going to run into too much overlap in type of game.
No. No.
And I think that is certainly also something that kind of colors my point of view right now.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
don't really.
It would definitely be easier to balance a healthy variety
Yeah.
of the current releases than it would in I think more historical period where it was a holiday season. A lot of similar games are going to be releasing. You're going to get a couple of racing games. You're going to get a couple open world games. You're going to get a couple of shooters. And historically, especially in like the 2010s, that's what you had access to.
Yeah.
That's the games that were releasing that holiday season. But you could jump in and out of an indie game, balance that against a story-based larger game, play like a little sports game or something that's a little more round-based on the side, and like that would definitely be a lot easier to manage.
Here's the thing, Tucker. You're coughing.
Sorry, I was just thinking about video
You're
games.
thinking about video games. You're getting all physically worked up. I am too. I'm sweating, mostly because it's the 26th of September and it's like fucking 80 degrees in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But
Thanks, Obama.
exactly. I think that we're doing too much foreplay here.
I agree. Yeah. Well, I want
It's important
to be aroused. I want the audience to be aroused.
It's important. I'm never going to deny that foreplay isn't important. I'd never say that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's lay it out here now.
Yeah.
Stick it in me or to me how FOMO informs you as a game player.
Yeah, it's interesting because FOMO is the idea that you will, because if you do not play something when it is popular, you will get an inferior experience.
Yeah.
And you want to be a part of that conversation, and that is tinged and historically has been framed as a very negative thing, as something that is a stress that people have that forces them to make decisions that they otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's ostensibly a scare tactic, not an intentional one, but a cultural scare tactic to get people, to coerce people into playing games that they might not otherwise.
Yeah.
As soon as they release. But the interesting thing that for me is, and I've been thinking about this a lot since we decided this is the topic we're going to talk about, is I see the concept of FOMO, but I don't see it as a negative. For me, I see it as a bonus. Is the game exists, and the idea that there is this optimal time to play it, when the community engagement, when the freshness of it, when the unknown aspect of it, as I want to dive into each of those, when those are most harmonious around the launch of a game, to me that is a plus. That is a bonus for me playing a game. I would personally vastly prefer to play a game when it releases because of all the elements that, well, might be viewed by other people as like a potential fear or a negative, to like a stress of needing to play it when this comes out. I'm like, well, I can enjoy this game in 2 years, great, or I can play it now and I can enjoy it or not enjoy it, and I'll get those extra kudos, those extra bonus points that are kind of baked into this release time period that you cannot get anywhere else.
Now, before I give my point of view and we really get off to the races, I want to ask you some follow-up questions.
Okay.
One, if you're thinking about this as a bonus, is the absence of it, like let's say here's the baseline for the game, right? You get to play at release, you're up above the baseline experience. If you miss out on that launch experience, is your experience with the game lowered?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so. Yeah.
I was curious about that. And then the other thing I was curious about, I forget. So maybe it'll
Whoa.
come up later.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, Tucker, USA Today wrote something here.
What the hell? This guy's going to like a not even a reputable games news source. This is like a television station.
And on September 16th of this year, they were reporting on an interview that one Mr. Cillian Murphy did
Oh, I've heard of him.
at the Toronto Film Festival.
Yeah.
And he was asked about feeling FOMO over not being part of Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey.
Ah,
He
interesting.
said the following: "I have ROMO, relief of missing out," Murphy says jokingly. And then he goes on to explain that he's really excited for Christopher Nolan. He always, he's a big part of
Yeah.
his life, but he's excited to watch this movie as a fan.
Sure.
I like this idea of ROMO.
Yeah, I think that's excellent.
I think that's excellent. Relief of missing out. I would
Yeah.
say that I have ROMO often. And
Sure.
what I want to couch this in is that when I was younger, really more in high school and into early college, I was very much chained to whatever was new. That's just sort of the way I was playing, and I was kind of always on this treadmill, right? I think
Yeah.
part of it was because I was really interested in doing freelance writing at that time, and
Yeah.
there was a sort of incentive to be involving myself in new things often. I'm not in that place anymore. I don't have that
Yeah.
sort of same desire anymore, and I find that for me personally, I am able to enjoy my game playing a lot more sort of unburdened, in large part, not in totality, from keeping up with the current release calendar. Doesn't mean I don't buy a lot of games
Yeah.
new. I do. Doesn't
Yeah,
mean
yeah,
I
of
don't
course.
keep an eye out for certain things that will grind anything else I'm doing to a halt. I do.
Yeah, of course.
Mostly Nintendo published stuff. But I'm also a sort of person who doesn't enjoy having several games I'm jumping between.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
have a
no,
lot
I
of
don't
I don't
either.
have a lot of time to play games. I would say
Yeah.
that a maximum maybe playing 10 hours of games a week, right? And
Sure.
so if I've got an 8-hour game, but I'm playing also a 4-hour game, and then that 8-hour game turns into a 2-week endeavor, right? Because I'm balancing it, then I'm going to get a little tired. Like, I need that momentum. I want to start a game, I want to work my way through it, and then I want to finish it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of hard. That's not super compatible with having a million games all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Trying to keep up with all this stuff, because
Yeah.
I want to be in that one game's life. I want it to be in my life. And then when we're done, we'll shake hands and walk our separate ways until it's time
Sure.
to replay.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming at this from.
Is the Romo
Is Romo.
I think it would be good for us to just start our conversation as we dive into like where our differences lie. 'Cause I
Yeah.
think that's really gonna be the crux of this conversation through the lens of one of our community submissions. So I'm gonna read here first from our friend Daniel Navaroli of Nordic Gods fame, and he says, "I play games at launch that I'm excited for. FOMO has never been a factor for me ever. I don't particularly care what the industry or other people are playing. I always find it odd that people get FOMO. There's so many incredible games that come out basically daily. The FOMO machine never stops if you follow the industry. Playing a game at release is almost always the worst time to play games, especially modern gaming. Every game has a day one patch, games run poorly, constant updates and DLC, and also they're expensive. If you wait a year or so, if you can, the game will be more feature complete and be cheaper." So he's really presented an interesting case here strongly for Romo, where not only is it not a tension of like, should I be a part of this conversation at launch and how does that impact my buying decisions? But, and I think very fairly so, he presents these sort of wider like design almost and like economic almost level factors that impact the playing of a game and the pros and the cons of playing a game at launch that are certainly factors. And I'm curious, before we dive a little bit more into the FOMO element, how for you, these elements that he's talking about, this sort of patches, DLC, things like that, and slash or the expense, which is certainly on the whole lower if you wait for a game. How do those elements factor into your purchasing decisions of a game?
Yeah, I want to hold on because I've got to zoom out for a second because I feel like we got to clarify. When we say FOMO, that's half of it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the fear of missing out of playing a game at launch. To be clear,
Sure.
that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, do you think there's another way that could be interpreted?
I would say that a lot of times fear of missing out is, if you take the Cillian Murphy example,
Yeah,
it's not is missing the opportunity to ever be involved in something. Missing a concert, not going with your friends to the beach on that
yeah.
beach day,
Sure, sure, sure.
miss.
Yeah, games are definitely different, and what you've
Yeah,
highlighted with those examples is those are events that, in those specific circumstances, you can't replicate.
yeah,
You have to do it then. The interesting thing is the parallel to playing a game at launch, which of course is what we're talking about, is that that's also true. You can't replicate playing a game at launch.
yeah,
The different factors that I will talk about being bonuses for me. If I play it a year later, it's not going to be the same experience. But the reason that games are different is that depending on your values, you may not mind either positively or negatively
yeah.
the elements of playing a game at launch. And the game is going to be mostly the same for, in most games cases, forever.
Yeah, and
So
I also just
you can
I
play.
stipulate this also because there are games that literally, in a more regular sense, weaponize the idea of FOMO. I'm
Correct.
thinking
Oh,
about
definitely.
online games that rotate in and out content or cosmetics that are only available for a limited time. Like, that is
Yep.
real, true, blue, regular ass old FOMO. Well, we're
Yeah,
talking about something slightly different. I think it's just worth pointing out.
Mhm.
But as it relates to things Daniel is saying, I had an interesting experience last year where I bought Star Wars Outlaws.
Yep.
Not even at release. I bought it early. I spent
Yeah, you did.
$120 on the gold edition of that game, which is not as bad of a deal as people think it is, because it's just the game plus the expansion, and you also get it
Yeah,
early.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it doesn't matter. The point is, I spent a lot of money to play that game early, and the state that it's in now, having just bought it again on Switch 2, and I've been replaying it on Switch 2, is almost night and day. Like, that
Sure.
game is a beautiful example of what Daniel is saying, because even
Yeah, of course.
buying Star Wars Outlaws on Switch 2 on release day cost
Mhm.
half of what it cost
Yeah.
literally 12 months prior.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is certainly a part of the equation. I have to say, it's not necessarily one that I find myself encountering all that often, just because
Yeah.
I kind of have like a sort of loose budget that I keep for myself in terms of games I'm playing.
Oh, okay.
Just in the sense that and it's almost more on a title basis and a cost basis. It's like, I
Mhm.
only have so much time, so if I'm buying 3 games in a month, then I gotta like really think about that 4th game.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, definitely.
and so I think what he's saying is basically objectively true, and there's like a whole,
Yeah.
I think, very interesting subculture online on Reddit called patient gamers, where it's about
Oh,
people
interesting.
who wait
Hmm.
and then engage in
Yeah.
like it's very deep conversation about these games after they've come out, after they've sort of been
Sure.
patched, after they've changed, after the price
Yeah,
has
I like
dropped.
that.
So I think that that's
Yeah.
all very important, and I've been burnt by these things,
Mhm.
but I just don't know if these are like that central in the calculus when I'm buying a game.
Yeah. It it's everything's on a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing for me is there are games that I want to play, but I don't feel any imminent pressure to. That I'm very much okay with being like, look, this is probably going to be, whether it's Black Friday or a year from now or even further in the future,
Yeah.
something that's a lot cheaper, and that's fine. Like, the game will be there for me when I'm ready to play it, and that kind of like laissez-faire attitude to me is a very different conversation. I see that as like a very light pro. It's like, yeah, like if I wait, it'll be cheaper, and then I can play it, and I don't have to spend the full price
Yeah.
on it. But it doesn't really factor to me at launch, and into the other elements that he mentioned, the idea of having DLC and patches, which are definitely true, and but the interesting thing about those is that very much impacts different games, and is an element of different games in very different degrees, right? I think that most of the games that I play at launch, which is, or let's say within a year of release, within the first couple months of release, which is dozens and dozens and dozens of games a year.
Yeah.
The amount of games that I play that I find so broken or in need of fixes that I feel like I would have been better waiting are incredibly limited.
Yeah.
And even to the games that I that I do experience problems with. Two semi-recent examples being Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, obviously, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor, a game that I had technical issues with when I played it on PS5. I don't regret playing those games at launch. I recognize and remember that I had issues with them. But for me, and again, this goes to the bonus points, I would rather play the messed up versions of those games at launch when the energy is there and the conversation is there and they're fresh and new and the sort of story of those games, the conversation of those games is still evolving, than for me, because again, to the bonus points thing, wait, I mean, in Scarlet and Violet's case, 3 years and then play a much better version of that game, but then I would have had to wait 3 years to play Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And that no way that's worth it. I got to play that game 3 years ago as opposed to waiting. And so I definitely err on the side of, I know that it will be like on a technical level and even usually a design level better if I wait for a lot of games, but that doesn't really bother me, because the amount of times that I've been truly burned by a game needing those kind of patches is very, very, very slim.
Yeah, I mean, your point, I think that's a really interesting point of view. The Scarlet and Violet is an extreme example, right? Because the state the game is in now not only took forever, but took a different piece of hardware's release to resolve it, right? But and that's also an interesting situation because like Pokemon is among your favorite game series ever, and so the idea of waiting for that is basically impossible. But if you think about a game like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which if I remember you liked, but
it's a great game,
like that. Even in a case like that, you would say where maybe the personal drive, your personal connection to that wasn't so high, you still are happier to have played the sort of fucked up version than if you had waited and played it later. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And why is that? I know why, but this is I want you to say it.
Well, and this is why we're having this conversation. Is I think what people who use FOMO as this, they describe it as this fear tactic. They heavily laden it with, as Daniel did, with like a negative aura. He's like, I can't understand why people ever have FOMO. Like all these pros of waiting exist, and they definitely do. But what I think that discounts is a difference in values between different game players. Is that for someone like me, and I don't know what percentage of other people share this same desire or the same values, but for a different kind of gamer, of course, which I am, the pro is that it is much strong. There's a much stronger community and conversation around games when they come out than almost any point in the future.
Now, I want more specifics about this because this is something I'm really interested in. When you say more community and more conversation, I'm curious what that means for you. Does that mean, I kind of have a couple different things. Does that mean more time playing a game side by side for the first time with friends? Just go yes or no.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. We're going on the list. Yes.
Does that mean more interactions with random people online about the game? Is that something you...
Sure. Oh, yeah, definitely.
So would you say that part of the importance of this is for you is that this is when people who you've never met before will probably never talk to again are playing the game too, and you can share that moment with them?
Yeah, I think there are 3 parts of that in the wider community element. Is obviously, and I think this is the strongest element of energy at launch, is like news coverage, right? Reviews are coming out. Sure. People are going to be talking like on maybe a weekly basis about some of these games. Guides will be coming out. All of that stuff basically only happens at launch. And that's something that can be part of that energy of just being inundated with information. And then there's the middle part, which is community, the internet talking about it, meeting people online on just people posting different message threads on all sorts of different platforms. That is much more active and in most cases like more contentious and more interesting to engage with for me during that launch period. And to that point, like discoveries haven't happened yet, right? Is people are figuring things out at the same time. Secrets aren't inherently known. Spoilers might still be like not fully understood yet. There is this experience that I certainly want to have a conversation about a little bit deeper of the engagement with the mystery of a game that is much easier to engage with when the game is new and the mystery has not been solved, as opposed to if you wait even a year or 2 years or 3 years or even more, there's not as much of mystery playing a game. Some of the best secrets of all time in games, now we know as the best secrets of all time, and you know what the secret is. You don't have that experience of going into the game and not knowing that that's going to be there or how to find it. Like, the first Easter egg in Adventure on Atari is like, that's like the one thing I know about that game is how to find it. And so I'll never be able to have the like, holy shit. Not that I would necessarily want to
I get what you mean,
Adventure, but just any secret or reveal in a game, like Aerith dying in Final Fantasy VII. I'm never going to be able to experience Aerith dying as like a holy crap, I can't believe this is happening moment. Because the first thing I learned about Final Fantasy VII is that Aerith dies.
Well, so I want to keep getting more specifics. I'm just trying to understand the picture. Because when you talk about engagement, I'm curious for you personally what activities that includes. And really what I'm curious about is this a environment wherein you are adding to the hunt for these mysteries, where you are adding to the discussion, or is it more so you receiving that information, or is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the game.
Yeah,
but it is both. Those are both parts of it, and I can choose where I want to place myself in that wider.
Like, here's an example. Like when Elden Ring was coming out. I mean, this is many years ago. We were like 20 when that game came out, so it was a very different time in our lives. But the point is, like when Elden Ring was coming out, or put this in the context of the Duskbloods, if you'd rather, were you / are you going to be like on the Reddit or insert any platform sharing your discoveries and helping work with other people to reach the conclusions for these mysteries? Is that something you like to do or is important to you?
On occasion. When it comes to like Reddit conversation,
or Twitter or whatever, Discord or
I think that's an interesting intersection where I like to look at that stuff. I like to follow a subreddit of a game I'm interested in as it's happening. Subscribe to the YouTube channels that are talking about the game as it's happening. But here's the place where I think that intersects with actually the third element that I was talking about earlier is the people that I want to do that with are my friends. It is my community that I have. It is my friends who don't know that this is how that solves, or me not knowing and being able to ask them about it. My Discord, my direct friends, things like that.
I'm thinking about watching live streams. I'm thinking about engaging with reviews. I'm thinking about seeing how the game's sort of being praised on social media. Like, to what extent is that important to you as well? So more receiving the discourse than like helping or like being actively part of the work of figuring out a game.
I think it's pretty important. I think that the direct community engagement for me is the most important thing. But in the very common situation that no one I know is playing a game that I'm currently playing, it's easy for me to feel that empty fucking giant void in my heart by like watching a bunch of YouTube videos or like reading a bunch of debate comments on Twitter. Like these are things that I find myself passively doing. And those do help me very much engage on a deeper level with the work. Is that if I divide my time in my brain into like 3 categories. It's like, okay, shit I have to do. And I'm just being my whole day.
Sure.
I have to do these work things. I have to eat. I have to sleep, whatever. Then there's game time that I'm playing a video game and I'm engaging directly, hands on the sticks with the game. Then there is this extra time that can be filled with engagement with a game. Listening to podcasts about it, reading reviews about it, looking up articles about it, looking up guides in my free time and in other conversations that then expand my engagement with a game outside of just playing it. And that extra time spent brings me even closer to what I'm playing. And even in some cases, even if I'm not loving a game, even if I'm not super engaged with it, the experience and my engagement on like a depth level with a game can be brought up by reading a bunch of articles about it, by listening to podcasts about it. And so I find that and that's kind of what I'm talking about with the bonus part of it, is that helps me to engage deeper with and appreciate on a more personal level, on like a knowledge level, with way more games, because I find it so interesting when that stuff is happening, when these reviews are going up, when the conversations are happening, when the podcasters that I listen to frequently are talking about the game. It all adds up to a wider experience with the game that helps me to connect with it on a deeper level.
So I got one final question, and this ends my interrogation of you.
Yes. By the way, which never stops, by the way.
Of course.
Just we're gonna be in our 90s, and you're gonna be like poking me with weird shit.
Monster Hunter Wilds came out this year. We both played it. We had very different appraisals of the game. And I was checking your backlogged here because I was looking for a good example. And you have Monster Hunter almost at the very bottom of your list of games. The things below that aren't a good example of this point, because in the case of Monster Hunter, you played a significant amount of the game, and then you also engaged with all these different dimensions. You be it watching guides, be it hour-long discussion we had about the game, be it talking with Brendan, be it whatever. Like, there's a lot you did around that game.
Yeah. Or syncing up with other friends on the Discord server. We had a Monster Hunter channel on our Discord server for 6 weeks or something like that around the launch of the game.
My question to you is that we look at this game that you did all this stuff for, that you don't think very highly of.
No, didn't like it.
Would you have thought less highly of it? Would you have liked it even less if you had simply played the game and done none of that other stuff around it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the good part is that it was like I played the game, and regardless of whether or not I liked it, I got to have really fun conversations with people. I got to listen to podcasts about it and understand what they were talking about. I experienced some of these boss fights, so I have a little bit of context when I'm listening to someone talk about it. I understand the structure of the game and what it's like riding on the Sacred and like these different elements of the game because I had some firsthand experience. Even if I didn't like it, the fact that I had that helped me to then, in like some other spun way, engage with the conversation in a deeper level. If I had just either not played the game or only played like 30 minutes of it, we never would have had a conversation, right? We never would have had our review of it. I never would have really commented or done anything in our Discord channel that was about that. But because, even though I didn't like it, because I played the game, I was able to be active in that conversation. And the conversations were great, even if I was in a minority opinion on the game, even if I didn't like the game personally, I got to have a lot of really fun conversation that is a positive. I'm very happy that I played Monster Hunter Wilds. I didn't like it, but I'm happy that I played it because it let me have these wider conversations and talk to you about a series that you like, and then get deeper into where the pros and cons of different game design elements and like and friction and like focus and story and like these different things. Like, because I played a game that I didn't like, a game in a series that I didn't have experience with, it let me understand more about myself as a game player. And all of this is because I played it at launch when the conversation was fresh, when I was just as good and just as familiar with the game as everyone around me. And we got to have all that conversation.
And I wanted you to go through that exercise because I think it's really important to make not only a good faith, but like a reverent case for the value of what exists tangent to a game. I think that that's really the heart of the difference between the way you and I receive games. I talk about games a lot. You and I talk about games a lot. We'll throughout the week have many long conversations over text or over phone about the games we're playing, about the way games are made, about design aspects, about the wider gaming landscape, all that stuff. I love doing that. But I'm not listening to podcasts. I'm not engaging with the wider community most of the time for these things. The conversations I'm having around games are very much sort of concentrated in some smaller spaces with most of the people I know. And so I think partially because of that, I don't get the same out of this endeavor that you do.
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
it's not always the case, but I often
Hmm.
prioritize my game playing time above all
Hmm.
when it comes to
Sure.
interacting with games. I
Yeah,
read a
yeah.
bunch of reviews, but I mostly do that when I'm procrastinating doing work.
Yes.
And so my sort of conscious engagement time.
And you'll talk to me a lot about games, mostly when you're taking a break
Exactly.
from work.
But I was
You're like, I'm tired of doing whatever it is I'm doing. I'm gonna call
but
Tucker.
most of my conscious time engaging with games is engaging directly with the game. And
Sure.
then
Hmm.
I sort of like have this passive interest in discourse in our server or discourse in Bo's
Hmm.
server or in
Sure.
Jake's
Yeah.
server or whatever. There's a couple places I do it in, but um,
Yeah.
I'm spending increasingly less time broadcasting on
Sure.
that. I still have a Blue Sky account that is mostly just for me. Sometimes I
Yeah.
get a like or two on there. Mostly it's just to write a little something that's on the top of my head and get it out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because so much of my interaction with games is very specific to me and very specific to a smaller group of people, I find myself kind of less moved by the whims of what's happening in the water space. But I also want to make this contention that I was thinking of when I was vacuuming up some Niger seed husks from my yard before we were recording.
Hmm. Okay. I would have preferred if you were vacuuming another seed husk, but
Well, I checked, but there were not really any black oil sunflower seed husks under the tube feeder to vacuum up.
okay. Interesting.
To me,
Yeah.
if a game's conversation is only electric and active in the immediate period following its release, it's not a
Hmm.
conversation I care about. So
Hmm. Okay.
and I want to give some examples to make this a more concrete thing. And
Yeah.
I want to
Sure.
use some recent games as an example.
Yeah. Why not?
Expedition 33 is a game that I bought in large part because of my interest with involving myself in the wider discussion around the game.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm. It's a game you ended up
yeah,
really
I
liking.
actually loved that game. It's one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah.
And this is
Hmm.
also to show that, just because this is generally the rule in the way I play and engage with games doesn't mean it's always the way I act.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't buy Expedition 33 at release. I played it many months after release. And I
Yeah.
think the reason that I felt so compelled and so moved by the conversations happening around the game to want to involve myself in them is that those conversations were really close to the text. They were about what happens in the story, they're about the way the
Mm-hmm.
mechanics
Yeah.
feel, the way that the game feels to play, what it means to different types of players. And that game had such a sort of a both strong but also provocative and in some ways quite messy core that for
Hmm.
months after to this day and
Yeah. Yeah.
through no doubt into the future these conversations are going to continue to build and evolve about Expedition 33,
Yeah. Totally.
and they're the kind of conversations that I needed to have played the game to involve myself in.
Of course.
And some of the best
Yeah.
conversations I've had about games this year have been with people in our server about Expedition 33 and the minutia of it and how we responded to it or how we responded to it
Hmm.
differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of conversation around games that kind of just exists in the sort of opening frame, the release window, is not even
Hmm.
conversation that involves playing the game. So here's my example to that
Hmm.
point. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed Mafia the Old Country earlier this year. Also, actually, one
Yeah.
of my favorite games of the year. But when I think about the way it was talked about, the type of opinion pieces that came out about it that I read, the
Hmm.
most sort of incendiary conversation about that game, it was about the relationship between its length, its scope, and its price.
Hmm.
And there's a
Yeah. Sure.
degree to which, having played that game, I have a sort of, I think, maybe different appraisal of that question than I would have if I hadn't played it. That's a
Hmm.
conversation that's not happening too close to the text. I think a lot of conversations
Yeah.
around
Yeah. I agree.
games are like that. They're about these wider
Sure.
discourse points. And
Hmm.
so for
Interesting.
me,
Yeah.
that's part of why I often don't feel moved to buy a game for the function of it participating in conversation. Not only because I participate in less of it than you
Hmm.
do, but because a lot of it
Yeah.
I feel like I can engage with just by being informed and having traveled through the world of games forever.
Sure.
And so I think that's a
Yeah.
key point for me. If the discourse is going to end at this sort of far from text stuff a week after release, I don't feel like I need
Mhm.
to do anything more with the game than that if I wasn't already interested.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, I think that's a really interesting thing that I I think I agree with in large part. I think the difference where me and my like weirdly focused brain in certain areas lands differently in that is that I I I have to have hands-on
Sure.
experience in order to even engage with the the cursory conversation around a game. Um, like I think about two games of similar games that released this year. Um, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4, the Iron Galaxy remake that came out and was on Game Pass, and I actually think a lot of people quite
Yeah.
liked it. And then there's the recent live service skate game that EA put out. And I didn't engage in. I didn't play Tony Hawk 3+4. I've barely, if ever, played a Tony Hawk game, and I didn't listen to a single review about that game. I don't
Yeah.
know if people like it more or less than the other ones, or more or less than the original 3 and 4. Um, and because I didn't play it, I have no context for if I agree or not with the discourse, with any
Yeah.
conversation, any opinion on the game. And then there's Skate, a game that I have never played a game like it. I've never played another Skate game. As I said, I haven't even really played Tony Hawk, so I don't have any context for necessarily how Skate differs from Tony Hawk or whatever, but I played Skate. And now when I see someone bring Skate up on a podcast or mention Skate or share a Skate clip
Yeah.
online or talk about how they feel about the style or the pace of unlocking things or the funny rolling that's in the game, because I've experienced the game myself, and I've probably played 5 or 6 hours of it, not like a crazy amount. Even just that cursory experience with the game helps me to understand all of the conversation
Yeah.
around it, because I know if I agree or not with it. And so for me, it's very important, especially at launch, to play a little bit of a game myself, because I don't really feel like I can engage with it otherwise.
So
Any
here's,
of the
here's the
conversation.
question I have for you then, out of that. Thinking about Skate as an example, there's
Yeah.
clearly, I think, some tantalizing conversation unfolding around that game just insofar as it's getting some pretty mixed to negative reviews.
Hmm.
But it's also like, from what I've seen, a real phenomenon on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, I can sort of see the intrigue in that. But because I don't really have much of a stake in that world at all, I'm not
Hmm.
massively interested in ever probably playing it.
Hmm.
Um, I
You
almost
almost
did.
did. I almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting
But
thing.
like, I don't feel like I need to understand the conversation, or maybe "need" is not the right word, but
Sure.
maybe I don't really feel like I even want to understand the conversation that well.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
So, what is it
Mhm.
for you about the conversation as this wider entity? Not only one that sort of encapsulates the games you are like personally have a stake in, but the ones that don't, that interest you so much.
Yeah, because it helps me to care about them. It helps me to remember them.
Yeah,
A game like a
yeah,
sports game, and even like more sportsy than Skate. Skate is a sports game, but like EAFC 26 released
yeah,
today. Madden NFL 26 released a few weeks ago. A few weeks before that was the EA Sports College Football 26. Uh, I haven't played any of those games. I don't know the
yeah,
conversation around them. There are these games where it doesn't matter to me at all to be engaged in it. But there are none of these games that are kind of on the bubble, where it's like, it's not something I'm interested in, but it's something I'm not interested in because I know I don't like this, like a sports game, like I just have no interest in that, or do I have no interest in it because I've never played it
yeah,
before? And that's what I'm always like searching to uh, find the answer to. Is if you wind the clock back even just 5 years, there are multiple genres of games that I would have considered myself 5 years ago not a fan of
yeah,
at all. And then because of what some people would again negatively frame as FOMO, this idea of wanting to play a game at launch because you're going to miss out of the like larger new community experience. Because of that element, I pushed myself to try many games at their release. I think a recent example of this that I played was Street Fighter 6. If you had asked me in 2021, am I a fan of fighting games, I would say ARMS.
Right.
And that is, like, it's a fighting game, but, like, not in the way that people talk about it. But because Street Fighter 6 was new, and this is, again, something that I want to drill in deep in on of the importance of this, because my friends were playing it at launch. I was like, sure, I'll give it a try. We'll get to play it together. I'll be able to talk to Sam about these characters because he's a big Street Fighter fan. I'll be able to follow along with the announcements of new characters because then I played the game. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I can understand why this character is different from the ones they've had in before, like how this impacts the story because I played a little bit of World Tour. I'd never really played Street Fighter, and I certainly wasn't interested in it, but because there was this energy around the game at launch, because it was new, and because my friends were playing it, I'm a fan of Street Fighter. I think Street Fighter 6 is fucking awesome. And I've popped into that game every once in a while. I'm like, someone came over and we were like just talking about it, and we were like, realized we were both Marisa mains, and so we like both like did the boom, that big fucking animation that she does, and I'm like talking about like the victory animation, simply because I played that game at launch when it was new and when the energy around the conversation and my friends were playing it. And that's the real key, is that for me, because the conversation is so important, because the community is so important, especially with friends, it's really hard to coordinate that anytime outside of the release window of a game. Like I think about like Street Fighter 6, we played and liked, and we still like, but we haven't played it together in a year and a half, right? I haven't touched it in a while. I don't think my friends play it. And so even though Street Fighter 6 is probably even a better game now than it was when it came out, and I don't think people thought it was a bad game, but like, even though I might on like a technical internal level have a better experience with the game now than I did when it came out in 2023, I would not have a more engaging experience now, because the likelihood is I would download it off of PS Plus if it was on there. I would play a little bit of the story mode, play a couple modes of matches online, and be like, okay, that was kind of interesting, and then never think about it again. But because I played it at launch, because my friends were playing it at launch, there was that coordination and that community that helped me to engage with another.
Well, I think this is maybe the most fundamental difference between us. Gaming's not a social activity for me. And I think that is like really instructional to the way that we both view this. You know, I'm no stranger to hopping online once in a while for a multiplayer game, but that's not a regular part of the way I play games. I play games 90% of the time by myself, and then most of that remaining 10% is actually local multiplayer. The same way that I would bring out like the Scrabble board for me and John. Sometimes we'll play Mario Kart instead of Scrabble. Like these are interchangeable activities for me. And so I think that also informs me too, right? I mean, I will again go back to high school where I think generally FOMO is, I think, a stronger phenomenon. Just whatever your friends are doing, you're doing.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And so my friends are playing Battlefield. I gotta get Battlefield. I just don't. I don't do that anymore. And it's not a value judgment on it. I just think that for me, most of the time, if I'm playing a game, it's to sort of unwind and have a little bit of time to myself. And I think ultimately, like, if that's my highest priority, then the stakes aren't the same. It's more about, well, what's interesting to me. And I think this is a very different conversation, but I think it's also partially why, like, I don't really feel burdened by like the idea of having a backlog, or like even maintain the idea of a backlog, just because I'm concerned with what is speaking to me right now. What am I going to get value out of? And sometimes that is governed by the release calendar. Great example right now is I'm almost done replaying Metro Prime 1. I'm replaying one each month, ideally, if I have the time for it, until Prime 4 comes out. You know, there are ways that I sort of can interact with the state of games and loop into these conversations in a somewhat different way. Monster Hunter Wild is another great example. Like, before that game came out, part of how I was interacting with the Monster Hunter community as somebody who, yes, I've played more and more niche Monster Hunter games than a lot of people. I'm still a newcomer to it in broad strokes. Is that was an opportunity for me to learn from somebody like Brett and say, hey, there's this historical period of Monster Hunter that I don't have any familiarity with. I don't have much understanding of. How can you help me connect to that? What game should I play? Can you help me get that set up? oh, I'm playing this. What look
Yeah.
at this. Look at this fight I just took down. Oh, this was so hard. You are right. Like this
Yeah.
is, and I think part of why I'm raising this is because I think the reason I think that the FOMO can be such a hard thing in the gaming world is that the price of games is high. Just
Very true.
remove. I'm not trying to have a conversation about inflation or relative prices.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
what the cost of a game right now is quite expensive, and so I think part of the case I make is that for people who are more geared socially like you are, I think there are
Yeah.
ways to have that social experience that don't involve buying that newest game. I play,
Sure.
and I just think that it's not. I think what I resonate with Daniel's point of view, although I'm less cynical on it, is that
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
this is marketing. I don't think there's a
Yeah.
problem with being marketed to. I don't think there's a problem with buying into hype. I don't think there's a problem with any of this. But there's no doubt
Yeah.
that the industry and the community's emphasis on what's new and what's leaked and what's upcoming and all this stuff, like that is all marketing. And I think there's
Yeah.
ways to engage with that spirit in that discussion
Mhm.
without putting $70 down for the next game. Like,
Sure.
again, take it back to Metroid, right? If when Prime 4 comes out, somebody doesn't have $70 for that game, well, this may be a great opportunity for them to play Metroid Prime 1 for the first time. Or emulate Prime
Sure.
2
Yeah.
or whatever they're going to do. And then hook themselves into the conversation unfolding. Oh, this is happening in Metroid Prime
Yeah.
4? Well, it's interesting because I'm playing Prime 2 right now, and it reminds me of what's happening here.
I'm curious. Have you done that before?
Well, I'm in a privileged position to where the cost doesn't.
Sure. I guess that's a good point. This is more about the cost. Yeah. 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 Sure. That is interesting. I'm curious if. Because that is an option, and I think it's a good one and a solution to some of the problems that some people might have or the tension they might have with FOMO. And maybe people don't think about that as an option, which might be why people don't do it. But the reality is, I don't know people who do that. I haven't heard of someone doing that as this engagement, low financial investment but high engagement investment. Like that is an option, but people don't do that, and I don't really know why. If it is something that I think could be,
I think that's part of my more ideological contention with the whole idea of FOMO is that I don't think you need to be playing the newest games if you want to be involved in the discourse around games, and I think that there's this strange this strange dissonance in the world of games where we're so focused on what's new, but we also are really reverent for the past, but only when the past becomes new again. So what I mean is Final Fantasy Tactics has been an amazing masterpiece game since it came out, but now because it's getting this new version, now it's hot again and you got to play that version.
Yeah.
And now I would prefer to play that version. I understand that this is the big homecoming for that game. But that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be actually an interesting component of this conversation if you started playing Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and contributed to conversation about what's happening with this new version of an old game with this other one. Same way as I was saying, I was playing Monster Hunter Portable 3rd in the lead up to Monster Hunter Wilds, and then I was in a position where I could just pay the $70, get Monster Hunter Wilds right away. But even in the Crawl community, which is run by our friend Brendan, who runs the Crawl, there's people in that server who couldn't get Wilds right away. They were playing Try or they were playing 4 Ultimate, and there was this wider conversation happening in that space about Monster Hunter that everybody could feel included in. Everybody was able to contribute to, I would say that even if people aren't doing this broadly, to me doesn't change the fact that it's valuable.
Sure, no,
and so I think I just make the case for staying hooked into the world, into the discourse, into the new releases in alternate channels. I think that there is just a perspective that can be added to these conversations with that. Or even think about how, people were replaying Mario Odyssey before Bonanza came out. Sure. There's a lot to be gained from that. That choice to either play that instead of Bonanza while you're waiting for your Switch 2 or while you're playing that patch before on your Switch 2 before you get Bonanza on release. I'm just not so sold personally on the idea that the only way to really get into this discourse is
Yeah.
to have bought the game and be playing it there on day one.
No, I agree with that. And the way I would frame it is not necessary to buy a game day one to involve yourself in the conversation, which is that element that makes FOMO.
Yeah.
Is you're afraid of missing out of that moment of that conversation. And I agree that there are these alternate channels that people can take. Whether or not they do is another point entirely. But how I will frame it is necessary for
of course.
me to buy the game, to play the game. As I framed the like hands on the sticks experience is very core to me, to even kickstarting that interest to be involved in the conversation. I do want to move to another community submission here from our friend Andrew Orozco of My Star Wars Show famed. He said, FOMO is a factor sometimes for me. Not always, depending on how accessible the game is. I think we all enjoy experiencing a game alongside others, like watching a film in a theater with an eager audience. We want that collective shared experience, but I can't always have or get that no matter how much I love it. Here's an example. He says, I tried out Silksong when everyone was raving about it simply because I already have Game Pass, so I might as well. But I don't usually go out of my way to keep up with new releases unless I'm really excited about the game. Other games I want to play, I might wait for a discount. On the other hand, I did buy Baldur's Gate 3 a few weeks ago. A few weeks into launch because of FOMO, but I bounced off of that one after a while too. These days I have to stretch my dollars a bit as my wife has reduced hours at work and everything has increased in cost, and I am much more selective and unfortunately in a position where I can't afford as many games as I want. I really wanted to get Borderlands 4 at launch, but I simply cannot afford to get it until it goes on sale. So FOMO does have an impact on me, but at the end of the day, games are a luxury and one that I will simply have to be more careful and selective of buying. Yeah. That's a great personal anecdote for the framing of the conversation that we had on the other side, because while you are more selective about games than I am and you play less games than I do, neither of us are in a position where it's like a particularly stressful situation to choose whether or not we want to buy a game. It usually comes down to personal interest, being a fan of the series. I don't want to speak for you, but like for me, it's like, okay, like how interesting were the trailers? How interested am I in hearing about how this evolves X franchise or X genre or whatever? Like, neither of us have the same financial stress that Andrew or someone like our friends Phil or Steven do when making these kinds of decisions.
I mean, I don't have I rent I rent and I've got roommates and like I'm on my parents' health insurance. Like what? Like I think it's an important conversation, a dimension of the conversation that I just don't have the expenses that a lot of people 10 years older than us have that we will have in 10 years time. So it's like I'm not so worried really. Like, here's a great example. Silent Hill F. I didn't buy because of FOMO, but it was still a risk to buy it in terms of my enjoyment. But I was curious to check it out because recently I've been getting more into horror in film and in games, and I really enjoyed Alan Wake 2, and I really enjoyed Resident Evil 4 remakes. I'm like, well, I've never played a Silent Hill game. This could be cool. But I think when you have the economic pressure, and then you have the more pernicious marketing urgency of the FOMO, that is a different pressure cooker.
That maybe is the secret element of FOMO that, and how it can be stressful, that you and I don't in our current situations really can't experience, is the idea of wanting to, say, like play a Pokemon game at launch or play Zelda when it came out, or as he mentioned, Borderlands, wanting to do that, but having the internal conflict that comes from making a better financial decision for yourself is when a financial pressure comes in. And again, this is not something that I am particularly experienced with, but can certainly empathize with. The idea of how does that frame like you're thinking about yourself and your finances, right? It's like it makes you consider your position a little bit more. And for Andrew, like not buying Borderlands 4 and having this conversation brings up the uncomfortable fact that for him, because of his wife's decreased hours and the position that he is as an adult, he has these expenses. And so Borderlands 4 is not a do I want to play it or not? It's a can I play it or not because of the situation that he's in. And so that's something that I could have brought up, I think maybe should have brought up earlier in this conversation of something that is a very important part of this conversation that does not factor into my decisions, but that doesn't mean I can't understand or agree that it is a very important part for
and
developers.
I think that's partially why I advocate for this position of engaging in other ways, just because the closest position I can go back to is back when I didn't have any expenses, but I also didn't have a job. And then I'm trading shit in to try to buy games, right? And I'm got so little money I'm trying to stretch to do something with. And it's like, I think this is where Daniel's points are very salient of like, well, ultimately, if the game is going to be better and the game is going to be cheaper, in a material sense, if what you really want is that relationship with the game, you are actually going to come out ahead by waiting. And I think the thing I want to stress is the point I was making earlier about the conversations worth having continuing on, or the conversations that are more ephemeral being able to be had with or without knowledge of the game. I just think that if you play Expedition 33 a year from now, when that becomes sort of in the canon of games that is always on 60% Steam sale, for instance. I'm just pulling something in my ass, but I wouldn't be surprised that it's sort of game is always $19.99 when there's a Steam sale in the future because it's so beloved. Let's say that that's the case. You play that game in a year, you're going to have such a wealth of video essays and think pieces and different types of media to engage with in that time. And you're also likely to, especially, if you're playing a game after a big patch or after a big price drop, you're maybe going to be playing in a period of reappraisal. And I think this is an important thing I want to highlight.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe you can't be there for the launch conversation. And maybe even the conversation has died down, but it will come back, and it's going to come back differently. But that's still a conversation you can involve yourself in.
Of course,
I think about No Man's Sky, for instance, right? It feels like so often when there's a big No Man's Sky update, there's another conversation to be had about what that game has grown into, and it's still relevant, and that's still something you can think about and you can contrast against what came in the past. I was reading this really interesting piece from Grace Benfell on Endless Mode the other day. She has been in this like back and forth across many articles with this other writer from, I believe their site's called No Escape, and they've been talking about the role of games criticism back and forth across pieces, responding to each other. Grace makes a point in this most recent piece that part of the importance of having reviews early, because part of this conversation was spurned on by No Reviews for Silksong, part of the importance of having the reviews early is that the game will change. And it will change in two ways. It'll change materially. The game you will buy and download a year later won't be the same game. It'll be patched, it'll be updated. But the sentiment on the game will change. And she was talking specifically about BioShock Infinite, and how BioShock Infinite was heralded as this unbelievable masterpiece at release. And that game very much does not have that reputation anymore. If anything, it has a much more checkered reputation because of its political and cultural elements. What Grace was writing was that there's a real value in being removed from those reviews and looking back on them and looking at that continuity and change in the appraisal of a game. So I just think that, yes, you're going to be involved in a different conversation, but when that game gets its 2.0 update, when that game drops to $19.99 for the first time in its Steam sale, there's going to be a lot of people in your position, the royal you position, who's playing for the first time, and there's going to be a great, rich, long conversation that you're going to be involving yourself in when you do that.
Yeah, no, of course, And I think the interesting difference there, and why, even though I play a lot of games that are not currently releasing, I mean, most of the games that I play in any given year and on any given time scale are games that didn't just release. I love exploring games history, but I find myself very rarely personally connecting to the experience. There are plenty of great old games that I love to death, but there are a lot of them, even my favorite games that are not new, not newly released, that I love, that I don't have the same strength of memory with, because it's a lot harder to get access to that kind of deep level of conversation about a game outside of the time when everyone is talking about it. I think about a game like Wilmot's Warehouse, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I don't think I've ever had a conversation about that game. Not only because it's not a particularly popular game, but and not that it necessarily would have been something people are really talking about when it came out either. So maybe it's not a great example. Or let's find a.
Can you find a AAA example?
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, that I didn't play at launch. Resident Evil 7 is a game that I have had some cursory conversations about in the context of me being a Resident Evil fan, like my preferences for Resident Evil design, but I didn't play that game anywhere close to when it was new. And though I really, really like the game, it's my favorite Resident Evil game, I don't I don't even have the strength of like cultural memory for that game as I do with something like Monster Hunter Wilds. A game that I like a lot less because I didn't play it at launch, and specifically because people that I know weren't playing it around the same time that I did. And I can't understate how, for me, very subjectively, how important that is. It is even, we talked a lot about like social games, or actually, I mean, I don't know if we have, like, there are a lot of social games that I feel like I can really only enjoy if I play them.
What's an example? Just so I know what you mean by social game.
Like something like Overwatch.
Okay.
I played when Overwatch came out, and I was obsessed with that game. It was my favorite game for a long time, and I played a lot of it with my friends. I was really into posting memes about it, and like online communities about it, and following the rumors and the lore, and following the updates and the Sombra ARG, and like the new character reveals and teases and all that stuff. And Overwatch, I've played a little bit of it in fits and spurts since it released in the last 5 years or so. And whenever I play it, I'm like, dude, this game is so much fun. I fall into the flow again. I pick up Mercy. I pick up Brigitte. And I'm like, even though the community is very annoying about Overwatch 2, I'm like, this is still a really, really fun game. But I never get into it for more than like a night or two because the people that I know are not currently playing it. So that's an example of a game where I've seen both sides of the coin. An example of something like Rocket League is a game that I got when it was new. Or like, I don't know, I was given or something. And I've played Rocket League, but I didn't get into Rocket League when it was new. And now I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever touch Rocket League again because like, even though a lot of people play Rocket League and some of my friends still play Rocket League, it is missing that element of like, everyone is into it right now, and so I should feel motivated. Like, because then I have to play like a pros and cons game. Like, okay, if I'm going to spend my time playing something right now, I can either play Skate, that I'm seeing clips of online, and that my friends are currently hopping onto, and I'm seeing it show up on like the Discord activity and like on my PlayStation friends list. I can either do that, hop into that game, or I can play Rocket League. I have to ask them to play Rocket League. Maybe they have to re-download Rocket League. I have to like learn it. Playing it online, like people are gonna be much more familiar with it than I am, and so on like an experience level, I might not be winning as much, and so that might make me like I'm not a particularly competitive person, but like it doesn't feel good to have your shit pushed in a game that you don't understand. Like there for social games in particular, I think there's this really strong element for me of the only time I can truly enjoy it is when it's new, because all of the synergy is there. Even if the game experience-wise might be better in the future, or it might be worse, who the fuck knows. I know that the game will be exciting when it comes out. And for me, that excitement is a really big factor.
Otherwise you kind of have to, like, you're kind of beholden to the whim of surges in popularity then to get back in. Yeah. Like, a good example for me is Star Wars Battlefront 2, the EA one. I've played that game like off and on since it came out in 2017. I think I've bought it like 4 times also.
Sure.
But
Wait, how's that even possible? I guess maybe PS4, PS5? No way. Wait, there's not even a PS5.
They did a version called the Celebration Edition, which was every paid cosmetic for a flat rate. And this was many years after release, so it was like $30 or something.
Okay.
So the release version, the Celebration version on Xbox, and the Celebration version on PC and PlayStation. So Celebration version 3 times when the game had launched on PS4. But this year, the game has seen its highest concurrent player count ever. There's this amazing confluence of things. The confluence of massive popularity of Andor's second season, a ridiculous sale to where you could get the game, you could get the Celebration Edition for like $4. Keep in mind, by the way, I've not spent $60 4 times in this game.
No.
Like it was just like,
it's not Star Wars.
I've only, and that's only been, I'm $180 in that game, but
which is 40 is actually more than. Well, it's close to 60 times 3, I guess. So
But there are these moments when you can get back into a game, and that's something to jump on.
Yeah.
But you're right; it is hard in those intervening periods. Like F-Zero 99 was one that I'm like a Twilight warrior of that game. When you get in a lobby and there's like it's like you and 7 other people, and then
I didn't realize
91 other bots. Well, there's also kind of a metagame to it, to where if you want to win, you play at like midday U.S. time when everybody in Japan is asleep. So you get the fewest people and the worst people, and then you get bots and you beat them. This is not useful information to anybody, but
nope.
I want to pivot from the social game thing because I have another question for you along this line.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good example for me. Let me think of a good example. And essentially, the phenomenon I'm interested in. And what's coming to my mind right now is a music example, so I'll just give that while I find a game example. But I get a lot of my music recommendations from my friend Katie, and sometimes, I will encounter an album from a decade ago that I know she really likes. And I'm experiencing for the first time. Nobody else is listening to it right now. But I know she really likes that thing. And I know that I'll listen to it and I tell her, hey, look, I'm listening to this for the first time. I think it's awesome. And then because it means a lot to her, she knows that music super well. Yeah. Then we're engaging conversation about it. Does that strike you in any way? Like if part of it is the importance of connecting to somebody else and many other people through a game, playing something that somebody loves, does that do anything for you? Does that interest you?
Oh, sure, actually. Yeah. Prime example is actually Bloodborne, a game that I played. I thought it was way too fucking hard and couldn't have got out of the first area, and I just like never put it in my PS4 for like years. And then when I went to college and met my friend Joe, who's a much even bigger Souls fan than I am, and I remember going on a late night drive with him. I think it was after maybe he had a breakup and we were just kind of like hanging out in the car, and he was like driving around, and he was telling me about Bloodborne's lore before I'd even played the game. And he was just like ranting about it and how excited he was about it. And that prompted me to pick up the game. And then while I was playing the game, I was able to message him about it. Actively, like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Oh, I didn't realize this. Oh, this boss was really hard. It's like, oh, I remember that. Oh, there's a secret exit there. You can like find it. That in some way that completely recreated what that experience would have been like. It was interesting to have like ostensibly like a coach.
So would you
alongside
was that like satisfying as different in a different but equally meaningful way to if you had put it at launch, or that still have been preferable if you'd played Bloodborne at launch?
Well, there's a difference. I could have played Bloodborne at launch. I was 15. I guess I was 14 when that game came out. I physically could have. I could have purchased PS4. I was in middle school. I didn't have a PS4, and my parents weren't going to let me buy an M-rated game when I was 14. And so, on a practical level, I couldn't have played Bloodborne when it was new. And so I don't feel like I missed it, because it's not something I ever made a choice one way or the other to do. It's like, I mean, I was not interested in that game at all. Like the difference is like, if I'm interested in something when it's coming out and I don't play it, then I feel like I've made a decision to change my experience like that. If I'm like, let's just say 10 years from now, I'm actually really big into FIFA or FC, I guess. I'm not going to think back and be like, man, well, I really missed out on FC 26 because like right now, I don't care. Like it doesn't bother me. And like I don't think, man, I missed out on like Ocarina of Time at launch because I wasn't even born yet. Like there's a sliding scale there where it doesn't really impact me if it's something that either interest wise or practically I couldn't have played at launch. I'm like I'm logical enough to know like whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do some of the other comments here because I'm running out of things to say to you.
Yeah.
Yes. I was going to read one.
Do it.
This comes from our friend Adam Hurd, maybe Phil, right now. Every nickname on the server is in some way related to Phil. It's weird for me because I have this overwhelming desire to, and I think you're going to relate to this. You've already read this comment. I have this overwhelming desire to consume all things and be as educated about the hobbies I'm passionate about as possible. It's not driven by a fear of missing out, but it's driven by an innate curiosity towards experiencing and understanding as many new things as possible. So ideally, if I had time and money, which to be fair, no one does, I'd be playing every game that launches and fully driving that conversation around our art and media. FOMO doesn't really play a part in what I'm going to buy unless it's directly involving friends. I usually just buy whatever I want in games-wise because I'm poor. I'm kind of restricted to whatever comes out on Game Pass. I guess the pros of this are you're driving the conversation surrounding a game. You've got those water cooler moments if there's gamers around you. I really enjoyed when Oblivion Remake came out and people at work were talking about it. Being able to have that conversation is important to me. The cons, well, the game could be a total mess. And then it sort of reiterates some things we already talked about with Daniel. But I feel like you and Adam are like birds of a feather on this point. I feel like you guys have very similar perspectives.
Yeah. Because I think what the perspective that I obviously don't agree with holds FOMO as this obviously inherently negative thing that we should not fall into. That people, and you've said this before, and people on podcasts I've heard say this before, of like, challenge yourself to not engage with the current stuff. Don't worry about it. The game's still going to be there. All that is fine. But what I've advocated for, and what Adam is expressing here, is the idea that indeed it's to some people, not if not the most important thing, a very important thing is experiencing it at launch. And that is something that, like, it's totally fine if that's not how you play your games or want to play your games or whatever. But I like FOMO because it pushes me to engage with things. It challenges me to engage with things that I wouldn't already like. It helps me understand the broader games industry more. It helps me to find new games that I never would have tried otherwise. And so that value to me is immense and something that I know a lot of people share this, and I know a lot of people like to be engaged in the conversation, but I haven't heard it said as the way that I'm framing it now, of that it actually is a very positive thing to some people, and it personally very helpful to me in the way that I engage with it. Sometimes even more, as in the case with Monster Hunter Wilds, sometimes even more than the game itself, is that launch conversation, that release conversation.
Yeah, I think my contention, to more specifically than to just it's not valuable, is that I don't. Yeah, I think the what I take more issue with is the sort of the consternation about the volume of releases, insofar as, yeah, you can't engage in the release conversation for all of them, but why can't you just pick the two that you're most passionate about being there for, and you enjoy the other games as they come? Because there are, in my view, these other conversations that are going to happen around them. I think that's more my thing. It's not that there's no value to it at all, but it's like, if you have 5 games you're really interested in, you can, and they're spaced out thus that 3 of them you can play right at release comprehensively and engage in the conversation about. Those other 2, I don't really see the problem in then just experiencing them through a slightly different lens. I think that's more my thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think as I framed a couple of these things, that slightly different lens, I think, is significantly less interesting. Yeah. And also either significantly harder or more challenging to the point where it feels significantly harder to engage in. like
Well, let me give you an
it's
example.
it's very natural to me.
Let me make more
Yeah,
specific.
continue. Sorry.
Hades 2 is a good example, right? I'm sure you have a lot of
Yeah.
interest in playing Hades 2. I'm not sure if you have the time to play Hades 2.
Yeah.
If you just waited to play Hades 2 until December, when it's inevitably up for a lot of Game of the Year awards, and there's
Yeah.
significantly less stuff releasing, I feel like you could still have a meaningful conversation around that game. And you just removed one of the variables out so you can more closely engage with Silent Hill and then Yote. That's more what I mean.
Sure. Well, that actually I think is a really good example of a reignited conversation that is very easy to have and easy to predict being able to have. Is the games that are in the Game of the Year conversation are going to get that community bump and that massive resurgence in discussion and posting and videos and theories and new players playing it at that specific window, in that 6-week whatever window at the end of the year that the game released in. I like that. It's where I found myself trying out games like Black Myth Wukong and like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Baldur's Gate 3, all games that were up for a Game of the Year that I played specifically because, and I was able to have interesting conversations with other people playing at them at that time who didn't play them at launch because they were playing them when that happened. I love that. I think that's a perfect opportunity. I have found myself doing that many times. I will continue to do it into the future. Though a comparatively small amount of games get that same treatment. Not every game is up for literally Game of the Year, or even in that conversation for a Game of the Year. And also, that is specifically something that can only happen once and within the year that a game released. It is like, I can't do that for a game that was up for Game of the Year in 2021 now. I can't do that for something that was up for Game of the Year 15 years ago, even though it had that moment. That moment's passed. Yeah. And so, to be honest, that's like second down for me. Is like, is playing it at launch great? Then I get like a 75% recoup of that energy if I play it in that specific time period. At the end.
I guess just what I mean is just like, I think that there's I think what I'm trying to argue for is that there's just that there's not a binary between play a game at release and have conversation, or play it later and have no conversation. I think more than anything, that's what I resist. And I think that even if you take something that is maybe not going to have the same fortunes, let's just say, for example, you skip Silent Hill F. When Konami brings out the next Silent Hill game, whether that's from this team, I don't even remember the team's name or not. Yeah. Silent Hill F is going to be reappraised in that conversation. Sure. I just don't think that there is a many games for which there would never be that next moment. Maybe that moment takes a while. But I'm even just thinking about like the Resident Evil games. Like Resident Evil 7 is coming back out on Switch 2. Yeah. Even if it wasn't, Resident Evil 8 is like the end of this trilogy that began with 7 in some way. That's what I meant. Sorry, 9. Like, there's gonna be relevance to these games, and all I'm resisting is the idea that the same type of experience you're having only exists in that moment. It's not the same conversation, but I just think that the ability to talk about the game, put it in a wider context, engage with the wider community around it, doesn't just happen at launch. That's really more my point.
No, I think that's definitely true. Yeah, and very fair. Last two quick comments we've got here. One comes from our friend Siscott, who says, the only games he gets FOMO over are JRPGs, but not anything else really. I have an idea of what I like, and I've kept myself to a single game purchase each month. It's the best way to make sure I don't lose myself with buying games I know I probably don't need. I'm great at looking at deals, though. Some games I know I'll want to play, and then I'll put it on my watch list to buy once it reaches $20 or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also something I subscribe to in large part of, like, if I'm not going to play the game right now, I'm not going to buy it. Even if it means I'm just going to buy it like a week later and the price isn't any different, the patches aren't any different. I think that's one of the things that keeps me from excessively buying games. Sure. So that's just another little part of my way I consume games.
It's a good self-control and financial decision. And then finally, our friend Jace Thomas says, and regarding to FOMO, obviously, it depends on the game. In general, it's very important for me to play a first-party Nintendo game at launch, with with some exception to franchises I don't personally care for, like Mario Party or Fire Emblem. I do tend to feel FOMO if a game is going viral on the internet and everyone is talking about it. A recent example of this would be the Oblivion remake. I've never been a big Elder Scrolls fan, but I bought into the hype for the remake, and I honestly kind of regret it because I ended up dropping the game pretty quick after just a few hours. With regards to the pros and cons of playing a game at release, I think a major pro is playing the game alongside everyone else and being able to participate in the discourse. A major con would be if the game turns out to be bad and you spent good money on something you ultimately didn't enjoy. I would also say that sometimes waiting to play a game is better to allow developers to take the time to patch the major issues before you get your hands on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's interesting to me in here really is this idea of buying for the FOMO and then regretting it. Does that ever happen to you? I would imagine probably not.
I would say I have felt that. But even some of those ones that I have felt, I've kind of changed my mind on. Because I now operate in this method or mental process of even, like, example, Monster Hunter Wilds, not appreciating the game. I didn't like it. Playing it at launch, having those memories is very important to me. Two, obviously, very notorious examples of games that I did buy at launch that I didn't play much of and didn't like are No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077. But, and I certainly have said on multiple occasions, like, man, I'd wish I had waited to buy that. Like, oh my god, I didn't like those games. In the example of Cyberpunk, I even got a refund because that was something I was allowed in 2020. I didn't like either of those games. What I played of them, specifically at launch in 2016 and 2020. But now, I'm, in some sick, twisted, fucked up way, I'm glad that I played fucked up Cyberpunk at launch. And to the example, similar to the example of Monster Hunter Wilds, you and I had a lot of conversations about that game. We talked about it with friends. That was a game that was a cultural moment in its conflicting nature of it not performing well, but also it being a game that a lot of people really did like. And so I was able to, even though I didn't like the game, obviously, have that conversation and engage in the conversations. Here's why I didn't like it. Here's where it didn't perform well for me at that launch. And I'm able to have that sort of shared memory of launch Cyberpunk was a fucked up game, because it was. And same with No Man's Skies. I bought that game. I played for like 2 days. I had played too much, so it was out of the Steam return window. And I still have No Man's Sky, and I could go back to it, but even though launch No Man's Sky right now is a like magnitudes better game, I would rather have played it at launch when that was the conversation, when it was interesting that the hyped game of No Man's Sky was a disappointment, and that I had those memories with it, than play No Man's Sky now as a better game that I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk to anyone about, really. I mean, I could seek out those conversations, but I'd probably play and be like, oh yeah, this is better, and put it down after 2 hours. I think that playing it, like, those two examples are like the most drastic examples you could possibly have of games that were massively hyped and massively underwhelmed at both their launch, and now in both cases have massively improved. But now in the mindset that I'm in, I would still, if I could go back and change it, I would still rather have played those games at launch than waited to play them, even though the experience would have been better because the conversation was there at launch, and now I'm able to carry those memories with me forward.
I don't have anything else to say, I don't think. Do you have anything else to say?
No, I think we've been very thorough.
Also, we did play. Do you want to be perfectly honest? Here's what I was thinking about. I think we played No Man's Sky together in 2020 when it came out on next-gen consoles. Because I think we made a video about it.
I think we planned to make a video about it. And I think I played a little bit of it. But I don't think we made a video about it.
This completely pointless...
No, well, it's an interesting example. And to the point of if that we both did play a little bit of that game, and we may or may not have made a video about it. But the fact that both of us, through the confluence of it being updated and the two of us wanting to have that conversation and revisit the game, we were able to do exactly what you're talking about, of give it a moment where we were able to have that. But also to that point, I forgot that happened. So it wasn't really that deep or that engaging of a reappraisal or a re-moment of that game.
We did. Redemption Arc of the Ages, No Man's Sky 4 years later discussion. Whoa.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Whoa. It's really not important.
That's amazing. No, I mean, but I think it is relevant. I think it's an interesting example of both sides of this conversation where you're right. We were able to give it that reappraisal moment, and the two of us had a conversation about it. Obviously, there's video evidence. But yeah, again, to my point of like, it didn't recapture launch conversation. It didn't recapture almost any energy, actually. I forgot we made.
We've also played like 400 games since then.
That's true. Maybe more.
No Man's Sky was best at launch.